hold on. So, I'm sitting at the table this morning with my dad and Paulie, who we've established are both lifelong firefighters, right? Emergency responders. And we're talking, and Paulie, there's like, there's funny moments in conversation where like someone kind of says something that like they mean but don't mean, but they kind of mean. Paulie has a rental property, and it's a house that he used to own, right? And he kind of pauses in conversation. He's one of those brutally honest people, right? And he just goes, "Man, I wish that motherfucker would just burn to the ground." And like, oh my God. But what's funny about that is then we start talking about it like playfully, but talking about like, and then my dad goes, "Yeah, but you know what would happen if I was like, oh, like just burn it for the insurance money?" And Paul is like, "Oh yeah, exactly." My dad's like, "Yeah, but you know what would happen is the fire company would respond before it burns down, and then you just end up having to fix it with the insurance money rather than cashing in on it." And then, then they start joking back and forth, and then I go, "Well, that's why, you just put in a bunch of antique curtains before you light the place on fire, because that's just kindling." But it's not kindling, right? Like nobody would recognize that as arson. They'd just be like, "Oh, well, here's the problem. You put in all these antique curtains, and those are super flammable, man." And then they go, without missing a beat, they go, "No, that's why you shellac the walls a couple weeks before you light it on fire, because then it'll really go up." And I'm like,
I guess they would know.
And we're cracking up about this. But at the same time, I'm sitting and I'm like, these are two fucking firefighters, and we're talking about the most effective way to get insurance money from lighting your own property on fire. And that was my breakfast this morning.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. Honestly amazing.
All right, are you ready to clap now?
I'm very ready.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Woo!
You just smacked yourself in the face.
Again. Yes, we've established this, Odie, that in this timeline, Kevin smacks himself in the face every once in a while. I have the mic in my hands.
We'll get a stand like I have.
No,
be fancy.
I'm sitting crisscross applesauce in between my bed and the dresser to paint a vivid picture for anybody who's listening to this. I've got a nice Schweppes kitty corner to me, sitting close to my Zenitsu figure that Brandy and the kids got for me as a nice little gift because he's my favorite character from Demon Slayer. And then I've got the mic in my hand because it's comfortable. And every once in a while, I know you'll hear some variation in the volume of my voice because I'm kind of moving around with it. But I was a singer in a hardcore band, so there's not that much variation. And even if it's there, I don't care. We're real. We're raw. We're live.
I will paint a picture of my desk setup. I have 3 monitors, a boom arm, 2 keyboards, a bunch of hard drives, a Lego bonsai tree I got for my birthday. That's it. Just a professional desk studio for someone that works from home.
This is also professional. Don't you put professional in front of yours. I do. Like I'm not a professional. I will put professional. Sitting crisscross applesauce.
Where's your voiceover mic that you do for professional work that I get paid for on a daily basis?
Give me one.
Professional.
Send it.
Well, give me it. Yeah. I want it. That was the vibe you just gave. It was like, give me one. I want it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Unpop Podcast. It's a podcast where Odie puts pop culture potpourri on your steak. It's also kind of just like an amorphous blob of nonsense that I have to sort through on a weekly basis, and then you have to listen to, because you know what? You've chosen to listen to, and now you're locked in, just like Odie is for the rest of their life. Odie's locked into the shit that I'm bringing to the table, and this week,
I'm okay with that.
Your host is, as always, Kevin Miner, he, him, with
Odie Matthews, they, them.
keep the energy level up. I've got an energy level, and you need to match it.
I got you. I'm gonna match you.
Your host this week, as always, Kevin Miner, he, him, with
Odie Matthews, they, them.
You're a fucking schmuck. You're a fucking schmuck, Odie, and you didn't commit to the bit. You're doing your own bits. You know what?
I am.
You know what?
I'm doing my own
You know
bits.
what? You can do your own bit right now. I'm out.
Oh, I'll do the intro. Welcome back to the Unpop Podcast. I am your co-host, Odie Matthews, they, them. With me, as always, is the host of the show, Carvin Miner, he, him. Carvin Miner, how are you doing this today on this day? All right, for those of you listening, Carvin has put the microphone down, and he is doing the I see you eyes at me through the screen. So that means that I can do and say whatever I want. Oh, he's telling me I can. Oh, okay, cool. Today we're going to talk about how stupid Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, and martial arts, just martial arts in general, and working out, and being named Kevin. We're talking about how all those things.
You know what?
are
I'm
stupid.
back, and you're done. You're done. You're done. I see what you're doing. You don't even have opinions on those. You couldn't even back that up if you had to.
I forgot
for
what,
40 minutes.
I forgot what martial arts. I forgot what martial arts
I
you
do
do.
judo. I do judo.
I almost said kudo.
Oh my
Kudos.
god.
What is happening?
You're trying to dump a bunch of lighter fluid. You know what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
You're trying to shellac the walls of this podcast before lighting it ablaze with your bullshit. That's what you're trying to do. But there's no insurance money here. We haven't even built up to that point yet. So bad news for you, sucker.
All right, fine. I'll take it back. Today, though, we are talking about, speaking of things that are a dumpster fire.
Yes.
We are talking about live action adaptations.
Not always a dumpster fire, though. I will put that in. Okay, let's go. We're
I agree with you.
This topic came up, and here's what I'll do. I want to talk about The Little Mermaid way later, right? So let's get into what you wanted to cover with live adaptations, right? Yeah. Live action shit.
So but how this came about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say this came about because you mentioned you saw this weekend.
Yes.
For once, you went to go see a movie, and I still haven't gone to the movies this weekend because I've been too busy.
Yep.
Trying to go see Wes Anderson's new film. So maybe I'll talk about that next week if it's any good.
I went to the drive-ins. I saw 2 movies.
Yeah, so that's how it came up. You saw Elemental, which is Pixar's new movie.
Yep.
And you saw Little Mermaid, which is the newest Disney live action. So it got me thinking, right, with a bunch of live action adaptations of anime in the pipeline, one specifically Attack on Titan from Andy Muschietti. He's supposed to do Attack on Titan, but I don't think he will because he's doing DC stuff.
Odie,
but there's some... Yes.
I love you because I went to the same exact place. I went to live action adaptations of anime because I know those better than other shit.
Me too.
So, all right, good. I'm glad. Here we are. All right. This is why we do this podcast. You know what? You're not a schmuck. You're a great co-host.
Thanks.
And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about live action adaptations of anime. Go ahead.
You know what? I'll take back people being named Kevin being silly, but I stand by the rest of them. You made fun of
people named Carvin anyway, so whatever.
Well, the Carvin joke is because I was trying to text you K to the Evan, but my phone changed Evan to Arvin, so it looks like your name was Carvin. So I was like, all right, your name is Carvin. Anyways.
I'm Carvin.
So I looked up, I Googled best live action adaptations, and boy howdy, let me tell you, there's not a lot to choose from.
Which one was the best? Like, what was the top of the list according to the internet in all of its wisdom?
Alita Battle Angel.
Okay.
Yeah.
That didn't even have like an anime movie, so that's cool. I'm down with that. Yeah.
I think that was a fine one. So I wanted to quickly speed run some of the ones that weren't necessarily like anime.
Speed run it.
But some of the ones that stuck out to me were Garfield.
Oh.
Smurfs.
Oh yeah, bad. Okay.
Transformers, Michael Bay movies.
Garfield and Smurfs, first off, not actual live action. Oh, they have real people. Okay, got it.
Got it. They're just animated. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Those are
the
like
Flintstones.
hybrids. Okay.
Who on earth thought that doing a live action Flintstones was a good
The
idea?
Flintstones was actually, I remember loving that movie as a kid. Go on.
Which one? Because there's two. The one where they go to Rock Vegas is terrible.
I did not watch that one.
Viva Rock Vegas.
I didn't watch that one.
And then the last one that I would say sticks out to me is Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Okay.
Now those would be like for me just like cartoons, but there's two specifically that when we mentioned this that I wanted to maybe use as our
litmus test.
What's the the fitness gram pacer test.
No, litmus test,
yeah.
like the paper.
Oh,
litmus.
It's the fitness.
No, litmus.
Yes. Okay, that's better. That's better.
Just bring up the pacer.
But the two. I
think you have to trigger warn you have to trigger warn people before you bring up the pacer test. There are a lot of people who hated that thing. Wait, hold on, real quick before. What did you get up to in the pacer test? Just for anybody who's listening that has never had to do this, the pacer test increases the pace at which you have to jog across the width, right, of a basketball court.
You're asking me?
Yeah. What was the what number did you get to before?
I've never taken it.
What?
I've never taken it. Dude, I was homeschooled until high school.
Oh yeah, I
what
forgot
are you talking about?
Wait, your mom didn't make you just run the pacer test? That was a state test.
All right, I'm gonna put this out there as some lore. No, because my mom is fucking terrible.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
no.
All right. So back into live action adaptations. Flintstones was good. But what did you want to mention?
The two that I think everybody immediately hops to: Avatar: The Last Airbender, M. Night Shyamalan. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay. The other one, Dragon Ball Evolution, a live-action Dragon Ball adaptation.
Oh my God!
Yeah, you almost spit your drink out.
I forgot that existed.
I think the world tries to forget it
forgot that existed. It's so bad.
So here's why I wanted to bring up those two examples. Specifically, if you haven't seen the Lavatar, the last
lava bender. All right.
If you haven't, so that cartoon came out like perfect time for me as a kid. It came out when I was like 11. So it was like, it ran from when I was 11 to 14. So that cartoon was like perfect for my age demographic. Yeah. And I doubt you've seen it because you would have been a little bit
Avatar?
Probably past.
Of course I've seen Avatar.
The Last Airbender?
Yes.
The Cartbender?
Yes.
The Cartbender? What's happening?
What are you doing?
The Cartbender?
First off, all right, we missed an opportunity because Lavatar would also be a really funny name for Avatar: The Last Airbender, but he's a janitor and has to take care of toilets. Just throwing that out there. No. Avatar was like just around the right time where I like watched some episodes, but it was kind of childish enough that I didn't care too much about it. But then as an adult, kind of wanting to reminisce and watch some old shows, I went back and watched Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed the journey, especially Uncle Iroh. And I loved, like, there's a lot of like Cabbage Guy. There were a lot of references that people who were like maybe like 2 or 3 years younger than me would make in my 20s that I didn't really get until I rewatched Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, there is no war in Ba Sing Se and like all that shit. People would make those references. Like, they would be like, there is no war in Ba Sing Se. And I'd be like, what? And they'd be like, you never watched Avatar? And I'd be like, I watched a couple episodes, which I would say.
It still holds up today, too, if you rewatch it.
I would also say the Avatar, like, the fan community of Avatar is very forgiving. Like, if you know a couple things about it, they're kind of like, oh, cool, you're in. Like, which
it's not toxic at all.
Which makes sense because it's a Nickelodeon show, and in my mind, like, like there's no hardcore Nickelodeon fandom that's like alienating. Like, there's no Kenan and Kel gatekeepers. Like, you can just make.
If you don't like SpongeBob, you're out.
Yeah,
you don't know Patrick Star.
Yeah. I mean, even if you've never watched it, they'll just be like, oh, just watch a couple episodes. It's pretty funny. Like, they know it's kid shit. Like, it's fine. Anyway. All right. So.
Well, that's the thing. So right now with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
For one, I love that show. I've actually rewatched it a couple times in my adulthood.
Great.
And honestly, it's a show that there are certain shows that I can rewatch, like Psych, my favorite show of all time. I can rewatch that and I can enjoy it through and through. But when I rewatch Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's like nostalgia. It's just all nostalgia, So it's like so good. But with the Netflix live action adaptation coming out, I wanted to point out that Avatar, to me, the M. Night Shyamalan one, is a good example of how to take a property that is literally like perfect. I'm going to say it's perfect because honestly, it kind of is.
Yeah.
And changing things that make zero sense. So I understand that with live action adaptations.
Yes.
Like, do you like My Hero, right?
Yeah.
The anime?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I've kind of fallen off
So-
on it, but yeah, I like it.
That's fair. So this, Byron, if you're listening, which I assume you are, this is for you too. So look this up on YouTube.
Okay.
There is a UALA YouTube live action My Hero anime on YouTube. A bunch of stunt performers who were fans of the anime got together and filmed a live action battle scene in the style of My Hero.
Oh, cool.
Using quirks and stuff.
Nice.
And let me tell you, it is probably better than 90% of live action animes that I've ever seen. And it's only like 10 minutes.
Well, a lot of fan-made things tend to be that way, right? Because they're proper passion projects. Proper passion projects.
Right. And so my point with the M. Night Shyamalan, The Last Airbender, is there are things that he changed in that story. Like the main character's name is Aang. He had everyone call him Ong. The main character, one of the side characters, is named Sokka. They called him Sokka. Right? Like changing the pronunciations of names. But more so, in The Last Airbender world, it's all about the elements, right? Firebenders can just shoot fire out of their hands, right? They can just like fire. You want your grill lit?
Yeah.
Boom, here you go. You want to start a bonfire? Boom, here you go.
Yep.
In his movie, he made it where you had to have the element near you in order to bend it. So firebenders were carrying around like lighters in order to shoot fire. Stupid. Like why would you why would you change that? And his reasoning was, well, I didn't think people would understand.
What?
I'm going to rant for a second about why M. Night Shyamalan's adaptation of Avatar pisses me off the most. He is quoted as saying, I made this movie because my kids were big fans of the cartoon.
Yep.
He wasn't a fan of the cartoon. He didn't know anything about the cartoon. He did it for his kids, and then he took his kids' properties that they liked and butchered it for all of the world.
Yeah, they probably got mad at him.
Fuck you. I would say so.
Yeah.
And then, on the flip side, you have Dragon Ball Evolution, which is just, from start to finish, whitewashed, terrible, awful, makes no sense, and is just, what were you thinking? You know?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Both those came out in early 2000s?
2008, maybe?
Early 2000s for both, though.
Let's find out.
Definitely early 2000s on both. But that's an example of a company getting the property rights for something, thinking like I think that's where we get the idea that a lot of times when companies do reboots of things, that a lot of people will use the term cash grab. Like those shitty adaptations feel like someone grabbing for cash. It's not like they got it, right? But grabbing for cash rather than caring about retelling the story, right?
Oh, 100%. By the way, they were both 2009 and 2010.
Oh,
so
God.
Early 2000. Even
Ugh.
worse.
I can't.
Not good.
I don't remember where I saw the Dragon Ball Z movie, but I remember like that, and then like I never even watched the Avatar movie because I had friends who were fans of the show that were like, just don't see it, and I was like, all right, cool, fine. But the Dragon Ball Z one, I remember like I was like, oh, I loved Dragon Ball Z growing up. I loved Toonami, so let me go check this out. And when I finally had the chance to watch it, I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it like later. But I just remember being like, this is bad. Like, this sucks. Yeah,
awful.
No, it was really bad. Like, Piccolo was like really bad looking. And they kind of like, yeah, they totally effed up the entire plot. Like, oh.
Yeah, and they just, like I said, they whitewashed it like crazy,
yeah,
too.
they got nothing right. I want to
Yeah.
add this to the conversation. There is a live action adaptation of One Piece currently in the works.
Yeah, at Netflix.
And I saw some pictures of that, and that looked pretty good. The live action adaptation of Full Metal Alchemist, I didn't mind. Like, that actually wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I watched it, and I was like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Did you ever
Pretty
see the one in 2015? It was a two-parter for Assassination Classroom.
No.
Actually, pretty solid.
Yeah.
Better than the live-action Attack on Titan where they changed. again, that one that they made over in Japan of live action Attack on Titan, they changed the story
Wait, there's a
around
live action
a lot.
Attack on Titan already?
So there is one that I think it just covers like the first season, but spoiler alert for that.
It's bad.
In that movie, there's a death fake out of Mikasa. And then she comes back later on in the movie as like a big surprise. Like she comes in with the scouts to save Eren.
Yeah.
But like that's not even close to how it happened in the like they're not even childhood friends in the yeah.
They
anyways.
did do a death fake out of Eren in the first season. Spoilers. Wait.
Yeah, spoilers.
Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen Attack on Titan, there are death fake outs. But that's like the big fake out in the first season was they did like remember like Eren gets chomped in episode 4 and you're like, wait, what the fuck's happening?
Yeah.
And that's when the story really starts to open up. There are a lot of good like fake out moments in anime. I would say Chainsaw Man had a really good one in its first season and in its first I think what is it? It's issue 3 maybe where like they do the like you're like, "Oh, everybody's going to die here." And then they don't. But I didn't even know that there was a live action adaptation of Attack on Titan because to get into like my perspective that I kind of have when it comes to this stuff, I generally don't touch them and I for the most part think like, "Oh, it's not gonna be as good because it's not the same," and like I've already witnessed it. It's not. Part of me is like I don't think it's gonna be that good for me, and then part of me is like, well, this isn't for me, and my perspective on that is that we're always retelling stories. Like when it comes to the Disney live action adaptations, like people are like, "Why are you making those?" And it's like, well, I mean, Cinderella was a fucking storybook and then a movie and then an animated movie with songs and then, you know, like, and now it has a live action remake of the animated movie with songs. Like, it's not anything new. And I think part of the reason that people end up having just like this, I think part of the reason people have an issue with live action adaptations that they can't necessarily like, conceptualize and really properly explain so that they just end up calling it a cash grab or whatever. But it's something, once again, I think we should have been learning in school all along, and I had to learn as an adult, but it's Kurzweil's theory of it's like a law actually at this point, but it's a theory of exponential return. Do you know that?
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar with that? Like, so everything, like, once you've done something well and you can replicate it, you can do everything faster so that, like, you know, like the first printing press was invented in what, the 1600s, right? Was it? Yeah, because they had lithographs up until that point. Well, okay, so they had lithographs up until the point that we had the printing press. And the printing press revolutionized the way that everything was distributed. And then in that time frame, so like look at like human history, you've got like 1400 years of not that much knowledge being disseminated, and then you have the printing press around like the 1600s, either 15 or 1600s, and then like 200 years later, like books are just fucking everywhere. And then in the 1700s, you make like another leap because you have publishing companies that are dedicating their entire existence to just printing, popping up in different countries. And then you get into the 1900s and all of a sudden like radio. So now we have radio, and radio like totally revolutionizes the way that information is spread. And so now we've only gone 200 years, and then after radio there's television, and that's within the same 100 years. And then after television there's the fucking internet, and the internet is within the same fucking 50 years. So like the law of exponential return takes that, like if you take that and you apply it to things like remakes, I think part of the reason people have this gut reaction to a remake is because as a kid or as a younger person, you were able to form this sentimental attachment to the version of a story that you saw, even if it was already a retelling, but that becomes your version, right? So then when it gets remade in your lifetime, you're just
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh,
What?
I don't.
It's like Uncanny Valley almost.
Yeah, well, it's a little Uncanny Valley, but it's also you took the thing that I love, and instead of showing the version that I love to other people, you're showing this new one that maybe has some twists or has been reinvented slightly. And I think people, that it's hard to get out of the sentimental attachment and feeling a little bit like someone's kind of like, it almost feels like people are like poo-pooing the thing that you love because they're not, instead of just showing that, they're just like, no, we're going to remake it and we're going to do it our way. But this happens all the time in our culture, you know, and I honestly feel like if people had a better sense of how often things are actually redone, that it would be a little bit better and easier. Cause like if you go to the theater and you see one version of a Shakespeare story and then you see the same story years later, it's different, and it's people do that intentionally, and directors and writers do that intentionally for better or for worse, because they're attempting to express their own creativity while also paying homage to the works. Unless you're M. Night Shyamalan making Avatar, then you're just saying that your kids love it and you're ruining something, apparently. But you know, even there's a version of Sweeney Todd, which is one of my favorite musicals, that's on Broadway right now, and I can guarantee you, Sweeney Todd the musical.
I love Sweeney Todd.
I can guarantee you that it's different from the original because the person playing Sweeney Todd is Josh Groban. Now, do I want to see Josh Groban as Sweeney Todd? Probably not. But is he good? And is someone going to love this version of Sweeney Todd? And is it someone's first introduction to Sweeney Todd? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, proceed.
Well, so one of the things that you mentioned made me think, you know, I will give credit where credit is due. At least with the and most of the live action adaptations that are anime are Japanese studios. You know, they're smaller, you know, lower budget, like TV movie budgets. There's some for Bleach, there's some for Attack on Titan, Assassination Classroom.
I forgot there was
I think there's one for One Punch. One Punch Man, I
is
think, has
there?
one. But I will say at least I think I could be wrong. There's a few. I know there's a few. There's a couple Bleach ones for sure. But I will say this. At least with like the Attack on Titan one, where I mentioned that, like, you know, they changed the Mikasa and they changed a couple other things about it, right? Like, I don't even think Levi shows up in the first two parts, right?
I don't know.
And he's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
So at least these adaptations, and with Avatar and stuff, they tried something new, right? They tried to change the source material to make somewhat of a new story. Yeah. Whereas Disney just goes, okay, here's the original cartoon. Here's what was controversial back then. We're just going to take that out, and then everything else is going to be the same. Because, and my example of that is, have you seen, and if you haven't, it's totally fine, have you seen Dumbo, either the original or the new one?
Oh, God, no. No. I did not touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. I was like, how? No.
So
skip.
I watched a video that was going over the live action Disney adaptations in preparation for this. Yeah. And one of the things is, in the original Dumbo, there's a lot of scenes with Native American tribes being represented very poorly.
Is there?
Right? Like, that's like, yeah, there's like the whole scene where like they, wait, oh no, Pinocchio, not Peter Pan. I'm thinking of Peter Pan, the new Peter Pan. Sorry. Not Dumbo.
Wow.
Let me retract that statement.
I thought you were going to talk about the crows in Dumbo.
No.
Okay.
This one is Peter Pan, the original Peter Pan, and then the new one that just came out on Disney Plus with Jude Law as Captain Hook.
Yeah. Well, so
there is
in the original Peter Pan, there's the Lost Boys, and they have a rivalry with the Indians.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, do you know how Disney approached that controversial? Because the way that those Native Americans were represented in the original cartoon of Peter Pan was bad. It was really bad. It was red-faced. They were smoking. They were like Ewing Howe and like walking around like doing the Comanche screams that people represent poorly. Yeah. Like all of it was just wrong. Like it was just all wrong.
Well, the new one, like the Lost Boys even like sing their song happily. They're like, "We're off to fight the engines, the engines." Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know how they handled that racism in the new adaptation on Disney Plus?
No, I do not.
Because you would think, right? Like if you had this, like, you know, this old movie that you're going to remake, and you're like, okay, so it's 2023. And we represented Indians and the Native American culture really poorly in the original. How can we show that we respect and appreciate this culture? Right? That's what you'd want to do. Like how can we paint them in the right light? Right? That's what you'd probably want to do, right? They just took them out completely.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they took out the. I don't think it's racist. I think it's just and this isn't like a huge spoiler or anything. They took out my favorite character from freaking Little Mermaid, which I was so mad about. Yeah, they took out the French chef, man. He was my favorite. He sings his song about chopping fish, and he chases Sebastian around, and he's trying to put him into a stew or whatever. Like, dude, that was like the best scene in the entire movie when I was a kid. I was like, oh my God. It was like Looney Tune-ish, you know? And I loved that.
Well, that's my point with like the Peter Pan one, right? Is like, I get why they took it out, because there's like a scene, as soon as the movie starts, there's a scene where they mention the Native American tribes. You fly over some teepees, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? But my thing is, it's like, Disney, you missed the opportunity with all these live action remakes, because all of them had controversial stuff for the time, because they were made in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They were cartoons. They're old storybooks that, were written by people back then who were extremely racist or homophobic or anti-Semitic or whatever, And they had this opportunity to not necessarily like rewrite their history, but maybe, take ownership for some of the stains on their legacy and try to, put a fresh coat of paint to maybe show future generations that they've learned from their mistakes and they can correct their mistakes. And instead, with all of these live action adaptations, they just hired people that were big stars and didn't change anything except for taking things out and not like improving upon them. And I just think that's a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so now you're getting into like the realm of remakes in general, right? And I would say like taking Indians out of Peter Pan instead of like, because there's two ways that this can go. You can take them out. Well, there's a few ways that it can go. You can take them out like they did, which sounds like it was probably the right thing to do. Unfortunately, not the optimal thing that some people would prefer, but probably the right thing to do. Or you can just leave it the same and experience that backlash, or you can try to adjust it. And a lot of people don't know how to handle this properly. It feels like they over adjust, and it's this apologist nature where like instead of there being like, so they almost take away from the plot, and there's a whole like subplot of like, oh, well, I guess that we learned that there's a lot of respect that we could give to you guys. Like there's that moment, and it's like, oh, stop force feeding me that garbage. Because I don't care for either. Like, I don't want them to I don't want to spend 20 minutes with Disney going like, like having like the chief of the Native Americans being like, we're just misunderstood. And a lot of people just, they don't view us the right way. And like Peter Pan being like, you know what? You're right. We're going to get together and fight some pirates. Like,
well, okay, so let me ask you this then. So keeping with the Peter Pan example, let me pitch this to you. Okay. So if we're Disney execs, right? Yeah. Let's just pretend that we're Disney execs.
Right,
we're gonna role play,
Go ahead.
Kevin. We're gonna role play.
Go ahead.
All right. And so we're in a meeting and we're like, okay, we're talking about like we got all these cartoons. We're gonna make some live action adaptations.
Wait, I'm a Disney executive,
like, okay,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
All right. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, let's remake. You tell me like, hey, we're gonna remake Peter Pan, right? But we need to figure out how to handle the controversial elements of the original property.
Yes.
Let me ask you something.
First off,
I see your point where you're like,
let me stop you right there, Odie.
Yeah.
I'm a Disney executive, and I make a ton of fucking money off of this. Either way, it doesn't matter if this thing sinks or swims. We just got to make it, baby. Just keep the wheel fucking moving. Just keep it greased,
just keep putting boats
Odie.
In the water.
This is all we need, man. Just keep this moving. We're eventually, I don't know if you know this, Odie, but as Disney, as an executive from Disney to another executive from Disney, we are eventually just going to own Florida. Do you understand where we're going? All we have to do is make this movie. We don't have to do shit with
I'm gonna
it.
sink
we
it.
own a streaming service that's probably going to net us about $1 billion this year. And I don't mean $1 billion. I mean 1 billion, right? And we're paying writers fucking piss poor wages, man. They're only going to make like what? What do we pay the writers every year?
Yeah, fuck
like
them.
A combined $300K?
A cookie.
Is that what we're paying?
A cookie and a
year?
free fast pass at Disney parks.
I'll tell you what. Half of the design for the new Space Mountain that we're putting in is like a chunk over that, right? Like we're paying people piss poor wages. We're gonna own Florida, and all we have to do is keep shoveling shit into the mouths of
Just keep making
consumers
Peter
across
Pans.
America. It doesn't even matter if we shut down brick and mortar because we're just gonna take over the digital space. Us, Paramount, Hulu, HBO, also Max.
We own
now.
Hulu.
We own all the
Hulu.
shit now. We own it all, man. Like
Disney
gonna,
does own Hulu.
People think that they're going to have a soccer league. No, it's going to be the Disney Football League. We're going to own it all. All right, sorry. I got way too into being a Disney executive.
Well, you just mentioned something that, you know what's crazy is that part of the Disney Plus bundle is Hulu and ESPN, which makes me wonder if Disney has a stake in ESPN.
Disney does have a stake in ESPN. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Yeah. Anyways,
what's
back to my my example. My role play example?
What's the company that we had was Prime Starbucks whatever.
Oh, Disney Apple Prime.
Disney Apple Prime, baby. That's
Disney
where we're
Apple
headed.
Prime, baby.
Disney Apple Prime. We're gonna own the whole world. Us and Bezos. All right, I'm done being an executive. Just tell me what you wanted to
do. You're demoted now. You're just a Disney. You're just in the room.
All right, I will listen intently.
But my point with that is, well, what I was going with that before our Disney exec. God, I need to check my bank account, make sure I still got that money. It's gone. Is that okay? When you're approaching a remake of a in this scenario of a live action remake of an older property, like I mentioned, right? You're right. You have a couple. You either take that out, you leave it in, or you find a way. In my opinion, right? If you pitch this idea and you're like, okay, we got to make Peter Pan, but we have this element of controversial of how we handle the Native Americans. How do we want to do it? If the best thing you can come up with is, well, we're still going to make it, but we're just going to remove that element, then to me, you failed. Because, and here's my reason.
Go on.
If you're going to do a remake of any kind, but I'm going to specifically say that this example is for live action remakes, right? If there is a controversial element in your past as a company, I feel you should either not touch that property and do what other companies do and quote unquote kind of like, address it, not necessarily bury it or brush it on the rug, but like address it and say, like, hey, back then, like, we own that mistake kind of thing, right? And then just don't touch that property. Or you find a way to bring that property into the modern day while keeping those elements that are part of the story. Because wouldn't you say that in a way, the Native Americans in the story of Peter Pan specifically are kind of a part of the story? I mean, they're the rival, they're there, there's the love interest of Peter Pan with the girl. Like, they're a part of the story. If you remember Peter Pan.
I remember Disney's Peter Pan from back in the day.
Yeah.
Let
me finish the story. Let me finish my thought.
Part of that story, but then when you have Hook later, right? Which we also had in our lifetime, which was like it was kind of a reimagining, right, of Peter Pan. They're not.
Okay, so this is exactly where I was going with it. My point is that Hook is a great. So this is all in the video I watched. So it's funny that you went to the Robin Williams Hook movie because they even mention like Hook is that way of taking that story, fixing the controversial elements, making it better, making it something new, and giving it out to people, right?
Do they even mention the Native Americans? They're called, first off, in Peter Pan, and this is because they're flying there from Britain and not flying there from the United States, so they're not called natives or Native Americans.
I'm just trying
they're
to
called
be
Indians. First off,
right, which is
secondly,
somehow worse.
That movie wasn't even made in our lifetime, so it's not like we are getting a remarket. Like, we're not getting a remake of a Peter Pan that existed, like, was made for us when we were children either. Right? Like it was what, 30 years before I was born? When was it? It was made in like the 60s or the 70s. Like 60s,
way
probably.
Before that. Okay, well, let me fix my statement
50s.
Because I've gone.
Wow. Anyway,
I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole of Peter Pan. So let me just pull that back for a second. My point is with these adaptations in general, if there's something controversial in the original, I feel, and I could be wrong, and that's fine if you have a different opinion, that if you're going to remake that, you should find a way to address that controversial element. Not in the way that you mentioned where it's like, oh, like, we're all going to be buddies and we were mean to the Indians. I just feel like they could have and I feel like there's properties out there that do this that aren't even remakes. You can just have that like group of people be included and just have them be there. You don't have to address that they were like, you don't have to address anything. Just have them be there. Write them as good characters, write them as good parts of the story, and leave all the racism and stuff out of it.
Yeah, I mean, so
is that so hard?
I hear yes, it is, because as soon,
I know.
But look at it this way: as soon as and you and I, very easy to talk from our standpoint, but as soon as you introduce a Native American element to a story now, there's so many things that you have to balance, because not only because it's not just Native Americans either. Like, there's so many different tribes and there's so many different histories across the United States. Yes, the way that they were treated was universally bad, right? But then you have to juggle, how do we responsibly handle the culture without appropriating it, but without being too much of an apologist, because you have the apologist version, right? And then you have the revisionist version, which is like, we're just revising it, and the Native Americans are the heroes, like, you know, like, and then I think the way that Disney chose to handle it was like, are we making a kids thing? Yes. Were any of these kids alive when we made the original Peter Pan? Fuck no. All right, cool. We can just like write a new story, but have it still focus on Peter Pan and Neverland and his rivalry with Hook.
Yeah.
Cool. So it's just kids versus adults. Really is like the whole story. The Native American thing from that we're talking about, since we've gone down this rabbit hole, that was actually
I hate that we're stuck on Peter Pan.
Well, it was superfluous, though. Like, because now you've got me analyzing it, and I'm like, did they actually come, did they play a huge part in Peter Pan overcoming the things that he had to overcome as obstacles in the original
His love
story?
interest.
Kind of. Well, it's like a side story for the love interest part,
kind of
right?
a love interest.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, he's got the thing with
it's
the
windy,
princess, and then, and Wendy, like, is jealous. And that was pretty much the whole thing, was to highlight how Wendy is a jealous girl.
Yeah.
I would say, like, if you have Peter Pan, you have Wendy, you have the kids, you have the Lost Boys, you have the crocodile, and you have Hook and Smee, who is my favorite character. If you have all of those, you've done it. You've got all the and you got to have Tinkerbell. But if you have all of those elements, as long as you're handling everything else properly, I don't care if you have Native Americans in it or not. Right? I don't care. You don't need them. They're not necessary.
Well, here's my
the
point.
Story.
Well, this is what I'm getting at, right? So I agree with you. Like, I guess I should have made this more clear, but I'm not the best at articulating my points when I have a lot of caffeine in the morning.
I am.
My point is, I agree with you. I think you can take those elements out.
Yeah.
However, when you are a company like Disney with a very large, controversial past,
Who's about to own Florida,
I feel like you cannot do what you did and expect people not to be upset, because
100%,
for one,
yeah.
and I'm going to put the pin in the Peter Pan example, because I don't even like Peter Pan.
Okay.
I don't even like the story of Peter Pan. I think it's stupid.
Yeah.
But the new movie is bad. It's bad regardless, right? And that's the thing. And that's the that's the bow on this. Yeah. A majority of these live action Disney remakes are bad regardless of how they handle these controversies, right? They're just bad. The Lion King movie is boring. The Beauty and the Beast movie is boring. Yeah. The new Peter Pan is boring. They're all Dumbo is sad and boring.
I actually kind of liked Beauty and the Beast, but that's the only one.
And on top of that, like, to go even further, like, Disney taking properties like, did you see Lightyear, the Buzz Lightyear movie with Chris Evans? It is a sad, depressing interstellar cartoon for kids.
Well, okay.
Like,
I've heard about the Buzz Lightyear one, and I remember when I saw that the movie was coming out, and it didn't look anything like the cartoon that I remember my little brother watching as a kid, because they already had a really funny kind of meta commentary cartoon when my brother was a kid. And I remember him watching it, and me at first being like, oh my God, they made a Buzz Lightyear spinoff of Toy Story. And then as he was watching it, I was like, oh, this is actually fucking hilarious. Like, yeah.
I remember that one. It was like,
it was good.
Yeah.
It was him versus Zurg. Like, and
Zurg's not even, spoiler alert for Lightyear real quick, and then I'm gonna move past this point. But you know who Zurg is in the Lightyear movie?
Dom DeLuise.
It's another version of Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, that's dumb.
It's him from the future, him from the past.
Oh, they were doing like a multiverse thing or whatever, or
time travel. Time travel. Yeah. So
So sick
my
of time
I guess
travel, man. I just wish I could go back in time and stop it from ever happening.
Me too, honestly.
I just wish I
Let's go back in time and
There's a fucking plot for you. Guy goes back in time to stop time travel from becoming a popular thing.
So I think that laugh. I think my point.
Yeah.
I think my final point on this would be, and this I get this is a controversial or maybe maybe it's hot take, maybe it's not. I don't know. But my
Your
thing
takes
is
are
like,
only hot because they're yours. All right, keep going.
We live in a time where the industry, as someone who's trying to break into the industry, as a director or even anything, honestly. You're at the time now where you have people like Jordan Peele and Rian Johnson and Christopher Nolan and I mean even Ron Howard to an extent. Actually, no, scratch that last one. I'm gonna keep those first three. Or Edgar Wright, right? You have these directors and writers that are coming up with these new and creative and engaging and personal stories that are fantastic. And my thing right now is, in a world where we have the potential to make stories out of real life, out of fiction, out of anything, why are we going into the vault and being like, oh, we made this in 1930, let's remake it? I understand the appeal. I understand the appeal, and maybe 1930 is too far. I understand the appeal sometimes, but like if you Google upcoming remakes in the next 3 years, there is a list, and I'm tempted to Google it right now, but I know like out the top of my head, there are at least 5 remakes of classic movies with modern actors that are being remade. And my thing is, why?
Yeah.
Like, why even bother?
Well, okay, to go back to what I was originally saying, part of it I think always is like I think there is a cash grab element. Like I think the reason you can get people to back a remake of something is because they go, "Oh yeah, it was already a hit. Of course we're going to." Like, okay, right now there are probably 5 songs on the top 40 where the backbeat to them is a sample of a song from the 90s. Like it's not just a movie thing. It's a cultural thing, right? Like, this was a hit already, so why wouldn't it be a hit again? Like, there's a whole new generation of people ready to consume this, you know? And I think that part of the reason that you dip back into it is there's also a limited, like, the creative well is relatively infinite. But the creative well, as far as commodity goes, I think hasn't yet become as deep as you or I would want it, right? So I'm gonna 100%. I'm gonna extend a little bit of an olive branch to quote unquote the industry when I say, like, yeah, I also get why you would like if I heard that there was another Back to the Future being made, it would not blow my mind. Like, I would just be like, oh yeah, of fucking course. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, what's the next? There's another Disney remake. Moana is being remade, right? Already.
I'm so mad. Don't even get me started on Moana.
Let's not get started
Don't even
on
get me
it.
started
But
on Moana.
just
because that's one of my favorite movies.
But just going into it, like, yeah, of fucking course. And
I mean, it's obviously cash.
And well, yeah. But what I mean is there's a cash grab element to all of them. But I think also Disney was attempting to, I think there was an initiative, at least from what I can see, of them attempting to update their archive for the new generation, right? So, like, I think part of the reason that we've gotten all of these remakes of the classics is, and some of them are bad and some of them are okay. I don't think that there are any that are great, but I think some of them are okay. And I think part of it is that they're updating it for the people who, like, are kids now, you know? So, like, when we look at it, kind of going back to, I think I mentioned this a few, like, episodes ago, but, like, when we look at something, when we talked about Mario, like, I didn't look at it from the lens of, like, oh, this is for me. Like, I'm 36, and I'm going to be terribly honest with myself about that. Like, a lot of things aren't for me. They're for, like, 8 through 16, 18-year-olds, you know? Yeah. Right? So, like, Harry Potter's going to get remade. Ugh. Right? Like, that's not for me. That's for the people who are young now that will experience it for the first time now and go up through it. And become indoctrinated to that version of it. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of little kids who know the Michael Bay Transformers, but probably have never seen the 90s cartoon, you know? And that's fine, because the 90s cartoon was just a reshell of G.I. Joe, where they were telling all the same fucking stories, where basically the moral every week was friendship, you know? Pixar movies will eventually be remade. And it's because, and that's fine, because right now they're all the same fucking thing. So, like,
you made me think of something.
What?
I think I realized. So, I think my whole point isn't that there's controversial elements in the originals that aren't addressed.
Yeah.
I want to make that clear.
Okay.
That's not my point.
Okay.
My point is that a majority, a bucketful, a handful, 90% of all live action remakes, or honestly just remakes in general, are pretty bad.
Yeah. But
I mean, honestly, like, they are.
But you're excited to see the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that's coming out this year.
So, but that's not really a remake,
yes, it
right?
is, though.
But here's the thing. Time out. Hang on. I'm gonna argue this point, and I might be wrong, but
reiteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that we will actually get in our lifetime.
I will die on this hill. So there are certain properties
to commit seppuku here.
Right. Okay. So this is perfect. I'm gonna combine the two things I wanted to talk about into one.
Okay.
I want to tell you real quick. I Googled 10 upcoming remakes.
Okay.
We're not going to go into detail. There's no information. I just want to talk about these, and then this is going to be my perfect example of why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles doesn't count, Kevin.
Okay, go.
All right. Here's some upcoming remakes, right? Memento, The Thing, American Psycho.
Wait, Memento,
The
like the
Fugitive.
Christopher Nolan film?
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
Scarface, Fugitive.
Wait, The Fugitive?
Escape from New York. American Werewolf in London, and there's not really a remake, but The Exorcist is coming back in the version of Halloween where it's a sequel to the original.
Yes.
So here's my thing, right? All those properties I just named, how many Fugitive movies have you seen? How many comic books, or how many extra media is there for any of those properties I mentioned outside of, like, maybe a video game or, like, maybe a novelization?
Well, there is the tie-in to The Fugitive, and I think, what is it, Law Abiding Citizen, right? There's a tie-in between those two, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
There was a Fugitive. They redid The Fugitive on Tubi or something as like a mini series.
Okay.
But here's my point: is that since The Fugitive came out, or even since I'll use Memento.
Okay.
Since Memento came out, have you seen anything about Memento in any kind of media?
No, you just watch Memento. It's a standalone film.
Right. So here's the thing: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, at its creation, like Transformers, like Pokemon, like a lot of properties like that, was created to have and expand into multimedia. It was created to have comic books and cartoons and toys and other lines.
Well, it was created to sell toys.
The fact that we're getting this TMNT movie from Seth Rogen, by the way, another weird name, Seth's weird name, stand by that.
Whatever.
They're taking the property, picking a story that hasn't been made before into this kind of media and adapting it, right?
Wait, hold on. What do you mean? They're putting it into this kind of media. It's a movie.
No, hang on. You have the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 90s, which were live action with the people in suits.
No, you have the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the late 80s, which was a cartoon. Go.
Okay, so you're correct. Very correct. Okay, so you have the cartoon in the 80s, right, which is a TV show, episode to episode, right? Then you have the live action movies in the 90s.
Three of them. One of them,
right?
They go to feudal Japan. Go.
Secret of the Ooze. You remember so sorry. Just got distracted.
Go ahead, keep going.
And then you have the live action CGI monstrosity that is.
You have a failed reboot of the
is.
cartoon show in the 90s or early 2000s, and then you have the live action movies by Michael Bay. Keep going.
Well, he produced them.
Whatever.
But still Michael Bay, right? So those are all vastly different from one another, right?
But I mean,
yes. But let me ask you this.
They're all
the story
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Are they all using, and I understand they're all using the same source material, but is every story that you saw the same story repeated over and over and over again?
Kind of, but
it's not.
But but that's the point of a remake, right? A remake.
But that's my
They're
point.
remaking
But that's
it.
my point is that with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, every remake was
Remake.
a different variation of the source material.
No,
But whereas a remake of something like Memento, right,
Uh-huh.
you only have one thing to pull from, the
Yeah.
original movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have all the comic books, all the TV show episodes. They have so much they could pull from to make
Okay.
a movie. And this new one is a completely new story we haven't seen adapted into cartoon or live action. It's
Okay.
only from the comic books. So there's a difference there.
I mean, kind of, but at the same time, it's still a remake of a property, and there is a cash grab element to it. Like, it's like, yeah, this succeeded before, we can make it succeed again. It doesn't. You haven't separated it on the Venn diagram far enough. Like, it doesn't supersede the Venn diagram we've created here of remakes being, tributes to source material and then also cash grab. To get into where my mind was going when you mentioned live action remakes, I actually think that we need more live action things to be translated into other media. Like, I think that we do it in reverse, right? Like there are cool live action things that come out that would actually be better as cartoons, and it's because. And this is why I was glad that you went into the anime realm. Like, when you watch an anime or when you watch a cartoon or when you watch an animated feature or an animated show, like the box of creativity and what's possible is up to the mind of the creator and the artists. And you can do so much more with art that you can't do in live action, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
Especially like some of the ways that like things would translate from cartoon to live action. Like in Attack on Titan, the reason it's so cool is because you get all these cool angles of the scouts, gliding and flying,
yeah.
but you can't remake those in live action and capture it the same way that it's framed for someone who's watching the cartoon, right? Like, and so that's why people who are watching the cartoon end up seeing the live action and going, oh, it's not as good. It's the same thing. It's the same problem you run into, which I would call it, what I would call it is like, I would call it initial bias. Like, it's an initial bias because the initial form in which you take something in, you tend to like, and this is more specific to books and animated things, but like when you read a book and then you go see the movie, you have a version of the movie that's in your head before you even go see the movie. So then, like, if they didn't cast the right person, or if they don't have the sequence of events follow the exact track that, like, your mind played them in when you were reading the book, or if they don't focus on some of the details that maybe stood out more to you that the author had pointed out. A really good example going back to a couple episodes ago, Lord of the Rings, right? Or when they try to pull from, like, Star Wars books material, like, when you have stuff that you paid more attention to in the book or in the cartoon that doesn't get put into the live action, it takes you out of it a little bit. So yeah, I would call it initial immersive bias, right? So the way that you initially immerse yourself into something is important to the way that you consume it thereafter. So like, I get what you're saying about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because for some people, their initial immersive bias is the comics, and they don't like, and so for them, this new remake will adhere more to that. But like, same thing with like Dune, right? Like, I love Dune, but like my initial immersive bias for Dune was the 80s film, which I thought was like okay, but not that great. And then I read the book and was like, oh, this is much better. And now like, and then there was the 90s show, which was actually pretty fucking good. But then like now there's Dune by Villeneuve, and it's different, and I appreciate the difference that there is for it, right? But my initial immersive bias is still there, so there are things that I remember that from like the movie and the book where I'm like, oh, this is a little bit different. I feel like your challenge when you're remaking something, when you're rebooting something, when you're re-encapsulating it for a new audience is that, going back to the law of exponential return, is that you have compounded audiences now. So like you have, and this is an issue that you run into, three of the audiences that you're reaching out of the millions of people who are going to consume something have a very different initial immersive bias to the product that you're making already. So you have to find a way to balance how you portray the material itself so that it's not, one, overbalanced, overproduced, and like bland as fuck. Two, leaning one way too far or the other without acknowledging the other, versions of initial immersive bias that people could have. And three, in a way that actually plays for the audiences that doesn't come across as revisionist or apologist. So like you have all of these different things. Like if someone made a Destiny live action film, it would be it would be weird. Like how do you do that shit?
I would love it.
Yeah, but how do you do that shit? It's a
like the Halo
big
show.
universe, right? Yeah, like how do you do Halo? You can't do Halo that way, right? Like that's part of the reason that Andor is so fucking good is because there's nothing for it other than references. So we know from the references when you watch Andor, like we know from the Star Wars references, 1, this is important. 2, the stakes are high. 3, this is a different story and this is the perspective that we're getting on it. So that's not even a remake. That's just like an expansion. So you're almost better off taking part of a universe and doing an expansion. Like Death Note got the live action and they should have never done it. Like there already was a Japanese live action Death Note and it already wasn't as good as the cartoon. And then even the cartoon, when you go back and watch it, like the anime, when you go back and watch the anime, even that's like kind of It's all right. Like it's good, but it's not that great.
That's my introduction to anime was Death Note.
Really?
And I'm not kidding. When I finished that, because I finished it pretty quick, I hyper-fixated on the outcome in that anime for months.
Wow.
Like, it fucked me up.
Oh, you mean like...
And then I loved anime ever since.
You mean like episode 38, the outcome.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah. That. Anyways, so I'm going to say this, and we're all about growth. We're all about change. We're also about personal development.
Yeah.
And we're also about realizing, identifying, and admitting when you're wrong. And here's the thing. This whole conversation... an hour and 17 minutes, according to my little recorder here. You have changed my opinion on remakes.
Oh, have I?
So
that was not my intention.
Well, I think this just conversation has.
Okay.
So, and if people get to this point and they're like, wait, because I'm about to just backtrack
everything
90% of what I just said.
No. Okay.
You're right, and I'm wrong because at the end of the day, whether you address a controversial element or not, right, there's still a story there. And my Disney rant, I stand behind that. I think that some of those shouldn't be remade just for the sake that maybe the story just overall isn't that great, or maybe it's just not something that should be, like you said, adapted into live action. Maybe it should be adapted into other media. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, I realized that I wouldn't have a lot of the stories I have and a lot of the inspiration that I have if certain remakes or retellings didn't exist. And it is not fair for me to sit here and be like, don't remake things, because you mentioned something and it got me thinking, what if that remake is somebody's only experience with that property and it's what helps them get involved? And that's what happened to me. And so, yes, I can sit here and say a lot of remakes and live action adaptations are bad, because I think objectively they are. Like Dragon Ball and Avatar, like the ones we mentioned.
Some of them are objectively bad, and I think even if that's someone's initial introduction to it, if they have people in their life who care about them, they'll find the good version of it, right?
Yes.
Like if you're interested in it at all, like if you watch Dragon Ball the movie and then you go and tell your friends who hopefully are also nerds, hey, I watched this horrible movie called Dragon Ball from the early 2000s, they would go, oh no, come over here, we'll show you the good stuff, like
exactly. Because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? There are things that I would like to see live action adaptations of, like Gundam. I would kill myself to see a live action Gundam. That was my favorite show growing up. But on top of that, like in addition, I stand by, there are some things like Memento that maybe shouldn't be remade, period, because it is an original idea that somebody had and it was created, and that story is good. But I think that in the realm of things where maybe there's a lot of different stories to tell, or maybe it's older, or maybe it's been remade a couple times in between, I think maybe you're right. I think that some of these remakes are good additions and maybe even can help people get involved in fandoms. Like, and the example that made me think of it is, what if they remade an episode of Star Wars, or they remade something with Star Wars, and that was somebody's only like experience with Star Wars, and that's what got them hooked on the franchise that I'm in love with? Or to take it to Lord of the Rings, what if somebody watched Rings of Power and they were like, oh, like I know it's not a remake necessarily, but that's what got them into Lord of the Rings. You know, like remakes and continuations of properties. Yeah, I think I was a little too hard on them, but also I think I'm just really bitter because some of my favorite properties have been absolutely butchered with live action and just remakes in general. And I think what I'm most upset for, and this is silly, and you can say it's silly, but one of my favorite movies of all time
Ratatouille.
is Moana. I don't think there's a lot of perfect movies out there, but if you ask me to pick one, Moana would be the first one that comes to mind. That movie makes me laugh. It makes me cry. It makes me happy. It makes me all kinds of things, Kevin. And the fact that that movie came out, let me just double check the ticket that I have tattooed on my body. That movie came out, I just wanted to double check. Yep, still came out in 2016, which is what, 8 years ago, roughly? Like 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
It came out in November.
Yeah.
November of 2016.
7 years ago.
5 years after this movie came out, they announced that they're going to do a live action remake of it.
Yeah, that's kind of
dumb. And here's the thing, right? My vendetta with live action remakes, I think, comes from The Rock. And
are we back to
you're
this?
laughing, but we are, because I'm serious right now. I got my serious face on. Here's the thing. I've said this before on this podcast, and I will say it again. I have nothing against The Rock as an actor. I actually quite enjoy a lot of his movies. However, he is ruining franchises because, and I'm going to say, I've said this before, but you know what, Kevin? I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter. For those of you that don't know.
It doesn't matter what you think.
This is a bit that I've had. It's not a bit. This is a thing that I say because I stand by it. So it's not a bit. It's real. The Rock has been attaching himself to franchises and then tanking those franchises for years. Yes. You want examples? Don't worry, I got examples. Let's just go through some of them right now. Journey to the Center of the Earth had Brendan Fraser. Then the sequel had The Rock. Franchise ended. G.I. Joe 1 had Channing Tatum. Sequel had The Rock. Then the franchise tanked. He joins Fast and Furious, gets greedy, does a spinoff. Spinoff tanks, leaves the franchise. He did Jungle Cruise. That was supposed to be a franchise. Didn't do well enough. Tanked. He took over, what was the other franchise he took over that I always forget? He didn't take over the franchise, but he steamrolled himself into DC to try to strong arm the DC executives to keep Shazam, Black Adam's biggest and only rival, out of his movies, refused to make cameos in the Shazam movies because he has an ego, because he thinks he's better than what he actually is. And now, because he's ran out of franchises to be a part of and all the franchise he started didn't work out, he is not only returning to Fast and Furious after a giant vendetta and public feud with Vin Diesel, he is now going to do a live-action adaptation of Moana, a movie that came out a mere 7 years ago, less than 7 years ago, because he cannot start new properties without them tanking. So he's going to revisit old ones and ruin them. I'm not happy. There we go. End of bit.
You know what? I can see. Here's the only reasoning I can see for them doing Moana is that very soon, and I mean very soon, he will age out of that role. And that is why I can see
already
him.
has.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
He's in his 50s.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Is like, you know,
I get so heated
if
with
you're
this.
a deity, I think you're supposed to be like youthful forever. Like that's part of being a deity.
You want to know what's even
right?
worse?
You know, are they gonna de-age him? Oh God.
Dude, who knows? What's even worse is the actress that plays Moana. I love her. She was like 16 when this movie came out, right? She's too old to play Moana. Yeah. She came out publicly and was like,
he's still gonna play the guy?
Right.
Oh,
so
she
came out, she was like, I'm not gonna play Moana.
So funny.
I have aged out of the role.
Wow.
This role is no longer it's no longer mine.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to be a part of the decision process on who takes the mantle of Moana.
Yeah.
So she's going to help find somebody to play her character because she realizes, hey, I probably shouldn't play this character.
Yeah.
And she's giving that opportunity to another young native indigenous girl to play a gigantic character that you bet your ass I will be there opening night, fucking bawling my eyes out, enjoying myself. But why can't you do that, The Rock?
Yeah,
why don't you
can't
give that
do
opportunity to another person of that race to take that mantle and have an opportunity to make it big in Hollywood? But no, you want to be stingy and take that role for yourself. I don't think I like The Rock as much as I say I do.
I don't think you do either. I think that's what's been happening over the course of season 0. Season 0 is just me priming you to not like The Rock in DC, so that we can.
DC, I'm basically there.
All right, good.
I will. You know what will be the nail in the coffin for DC for me?
What?
If Andy Muschietti doesn't get to do the Attack on Titan live action remake and instead. Or adaptation, and instead has to do Batman the Brave and the Bold, I'll be super disappointed. Because he publicly said back in 2018 he was a massive fan of the manga and was working with the creator of the manga to make a truthful and righteous adaptation that would not only adhere to the source material, but he wanted to cast people specifically based off of who they were in the manga. So you'd have a mix of people.
Yeah.
I want to see that so badly.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
We'll find out.
We will. Let's try to cap off our remake conversation. I feel like we focused on a lot. Like we covered a lot of the realm of remaking things. Is there something that was original that you originally consumed in a different media or medium that you would like to see remade into a live action or vice versa?
You know, this is going to make me sound a little pretentious, but honestly, like even as far back as like King Kong, 1933 King Kong, which I absolutely adore. I think I like typically for the properties I like, this isn't necessarily the answer to your question yet, but I think most of the properties I like, I've seen the original before seeing the remake. So in this scenario, there are things I would like to see made into live action.
Yeah.
I would like to try them. I would like to see, and I'm going to stick with anime for a minute because why not?
Yep.
But I would like to see My Hero attempted. I would like to see Jujutsu Kaisen attempted because I think that could be really cool. I just said it. I want to see Attack on Titan. I also, unpopular opinion, think it would be kind of interesting if they did a Dora the Explorer live action.
Okay.
Oh wait, they did that.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did.
Is it done?
Yeah, it's what's the guy's name that's the dad of Dora? Hang on. Yeah, it's been out. It came out years ago.
They did the thing?
They did a Dora the Explorer live action 2019 movie with Diego and everything.
You're kidding.
Michael Pena is the dad. Benicio del Toro is the voice of Swiper.
What?
Eva Longoria is the mom. Yeah.
That's so weird.
And then famous voice actor D. Bradley Baker, most famous voicing all the clones in the Clone Wars animated show. He does some of the voice. You want to know who the voice of Boots is? Danny Trejo.
What?
Yeah. I've never seen it, but apparently
That's
it's
fucking
fine.
Weird. What's its score on Rotten Tomatoes? I never care about this stuff, but I do care in this case. Let me rephrase. I rarely care about this, but I care in this case.
I care about this one. All right, here we go.
What do you got?
Dora and the Lost City of Gold.
What?
85% certified fresh, tomato meter, 88% audience score.
They purchased that score.
They purchased that score.
There's no way.
They bought it.
There's no way this is good. Yeah, they paid
be.
people off. They paid people to see that movie.
What about you though? What would you want to see?
I have one example, and it's anime. It's so there was it's actually on Netflix right now. There is an anime from I want to say the 90s. It might even be from. It's a long time ago.
Cowboy Bebop?
No,
it's already out.
No. Hot take. I actually did enjoy the live action, for many reasons, and none of them being that it was true to the resource, to the source.
Never
material.
seen Cowboy Bebop.
You neither?
I need to. I
Wow.
know.
Shinichiro Watanabe is the man. But I would love to see a live action remake of Monster, the anime, which was a manga, because it could be done as a live action remake. Because what happens in Monster is not out of the realm of imagination. It's actually very real and very human. And it would be a show, and it would probably take like 5 fucking seasons to do the entire thing because it's like 87 episodes of the original anime. But it's a drama, and it's about a doctor who saves a young boy who might be the son of Satan, and it's fucking amazing.
Oh,
it's amazing. Like,
I legit thought when you said Monster, I thought the next thing out of your mouth was going to be Monsters Inc.
No.
I thought that's what you were gonna say.
No, because that's not
going to say the animated Monster Inc.
But then,
well, it's animated.
I would also like to see Shinichiro Watanabe did an anime with the person who did with the music director from Cowboy Bebop, because Shinichiro Watanabe loves jazz music, called Kids on the Slope. And that would also be a good live action remake.
It's on the Slope.
It's really good. But it's about a jazz ensemble. So it's not like this is the kind of like there's a whole
it's even better.
There's a whole breadth of anime that could be done as live action, and I've watched a ton of fucking anime. Like I'm not afraid to admit that I'm I don't know, you can call it, I'm not an otaku because I get out into the world a lot, and I'm not a gatekeeper for anime. I'm not a weeaboo because I'm not trying to indoctrinate Japanese culture into my everyday life.
We're just big fans.
I'm just a fan. Yeah, I've always been a fan of the medium. The first anime I ever watched, and I didn't even know it was anime at the time. It was just a cartoon to me, but it was Robotech, which is like the precursor to Gundam. You know, I loved Robotech.
Yeah,
it was so good.
I know about Robotech.
Oh my god, it was so good. And then they actually introduced these nightmare frames in Robotech. No, not nightmare frames. That's from Lelouch the Rebellion, Code Geass. I forget what they were, but they were these frames in Robotech that they were like the precursor to Gundam. Like, so good. But yeah, like there's so many things in anime that could be done in live action that would make perfect sense. Like Kids on the Slope is a really good one. I'd love to see like Haikyuu would be.
Oh, I know my answer.
Haikyuu would be an amazing live action. What's up?
I know my answer. My own
or free.
One answer I take.
Sorry.
That's a good one. I take back all my other answers because honestly, the more I think about them, I'm like, you know what? Honestly, they could stay in anime. The only anime live action that I truly want to see, because I think that it would be extremely easy to do and it'd be really hard to butcher, is Gundam. Because we've gotten big punch-up robot fights before. We've gotten the Godzilla movies with Robot Godzilla. We've gotten Pacific Rim. Yeah. It's not out of the normal. I just would like to see it I want to see the story of Gundam. There's a specific arc in Gundam Mobile Suit Zero where it's a big tournament. Mm-hmm. And all the countries have to go and they fight. And there's some really good emotional beats. I remember there's a Dragon Gundam that's fighting a Mermaid Gundam. Yep. I don't remember any of the names. I was a kid. And I remember that the Mermaid Gundam was trying to win to support their family, and the Dragon Gundam was having the same thing, and they had like a little bit of a love interest, and they had to fight each other, and it was like whoever wins is going to succeed, but whoever loses, like you have an emotional time. Like there are story beats in that I think would work so well. We need to do an anime episode, I guess. Or this is our anime episode?
Kinda, yeah. Thanks for coming to our anime episode.
You know what? Even Star Wars did anime adaptations into their art style, because that's our Star Wars episode.
That is our Star Wars episode.
Gotta get my Star Wars reference in.
But to go back to what I was originally saying, I actually think that we do things a little bit backwards, in that some things are so fantastical and like kind of out there that they would almost be better in animation. Like, what my favorite example is, like, imagine The Fifth Element being like a two season series of anime. Like imagine half an hour
or Blade
episodes. Runner. Blade Runner did get an anime spin-off, which was actually really good.
I know it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but like the world, like there are worlds that we've developed that actually would be good in anime.
Like Cyberpunk, that's a great example. Was a video game. They adapted that story to anime.
Yeah, same thing with same thing with Blade Runner. Blade Runner was, like that got made into an anime, and like it's actually very popular in the anime community. Like people are like, "Oh yeah, that was just phenomenal. It was really good."
Huh.
But like there are some really good things in anime that actually I think we still could do in live action that would be absolutely top notch. Like I would love to see Gantz as a live action. Like Gantz is fucking sick. And that like I think people in the horror community would love Gantz. Gantz is like you get sucked into a video game and it's a survival thing and you're like killing you're killing like demons. But with
is that kind of like Overload or Overlord?
No,
the one where
no.
Okay.
Gantz is like you randomly get sucked into this video game, and then you have to suit up and survive the night. And there are different teams that are trying to survive it, and it happens all the time, and it's fucking sick. But then there's a 3D version of it. There's like a 3D anime style Gantz on I think also on Netflix right now called Gantz Zero. That one's really good. But yeah, I mean, like, I think a lot of times we do it backwards, or like when something gets remade, it's more of a cash grab and not actually a tribute to the source material. And so going back to, I know that I've kind of changed your opinion about remakes, but I also want you to know that in my opinion of remakes, like I'm just saying that I get why they're made, right? And I get that they're not for me always. But
that's
on
my
the
point.
same
That's my point.
On the same token, I do think, especially highlighting some of the things that you brought up, like I do think that like Dumbo didn't need one. Like I do think some of these, like, you don't need a remake of it. Like you can actually Memento doesn't need a remake. Like you can just point to it as a classic film and consume it the way that it was originally made. Like I think it was shot on analog, but it plays well over digital. Like it's fine. I think with stuff like that, like imagine someone trying to remake a fucking Guy Ritchie film. Like,
right?
No.
Another director I love.
Yeah. It's not happening. Like like it's just like it Memento doesn't need one. I think there are things that get remade that don't need it, and that's what it ends up, it polarizes the community of people that enjoy it in the first place,
Yeah. And like I said, my point is now that if the live action remake of Aladdin, Guy Ritchie, speaking of which, is somebody's introduction to Aladdin, and then they go watch the cartoon and they get to see the beautiful performance that is Robin Williams.
Oh my God.
And they wouldn't have discovered that otherwise without seeing Will Smith's weird genie first.
Yeah.
Then I'm happy that Aladdin remake is there.
Which is totally fine.
I'm happy
and
that someone
not like Will
someone
Smith
used that
is
as a
bad.
gateway.
We just know the original,
he's not terrible.
So then our brain can't help but compare. Like, and going back to
I actually like that
original
Aladdin
point,
movie.
like we're always retelling stories. Even Aladdin is like a spin-off of Arabian Nights. What's the Arabian Nights thing? But even like in Arabian Nights was actually, speaking of remakes, Arabian Nights was a huge influence for a Magic the Gathering set in the 90s. So like we're always retelling these stories. We're always re-encapsulating different things, like, and even in like 10 Things I Hate About You is a teen movie remake of The Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare. Like, we're constantly retelling ourselves stories. That's part of what we do as humans. And I don't
Lion King is Hamlet.
Yeah. But when you
That's what I know.
When you look at it from a consumer standpoint, when you look at it not just from a cultural perspective, like I'm taking you to like the 30,000 foot view of remakes and saying like we're always doing it, so it's okay. But when you look at it from a point of like speaking with your own wallet and speaking with your own preferences, I think it's also okay to watch a remake and go, wow, that was absolute shit because it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I knew. You changed too much, or like, why did you even make that? You changed nothing.
Nothing important.
Yeah, the only remake I would say that I've ever seen that like makes perfect sense is the shot-for-shot remake of Funny Games, which was originally a German film, but in German, and with like the way that the inflection and the dialogue plays, it hits differently than the American version. And the American version actually helps to translate the movie itself for the audience. Yeah.
So, all right. So, are you saying that that's your pick for the best live action adaptation?
What, Funny Games?
Oh, not live action. I'm sorry. Is that your pick for the best remake?
Best remake is definitely Funny Games. It's a shot for shot. It's really fucking good. Like, if you were asking me off the top of my head, I would say Funny Games is, if it's not the best, it's up there.
Okay. I would say that the best remake that I can think of, I don't know if this is the best one. This is the best one I can think of right now.
Okay.
Is probably the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong. Because the original King Kong story of 1933, I'm not talking about the 1980s one with Jeff Bridges where it's the Twin Towers and not the Chrysler Building, because we don't count that, or the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
But the original 1933 is good, but there's not a lot there, and it's very limited by the time. Peter Jackson's, I understand that people are like, it's way too long. I think it does a really good job of showing you what you need to see before the island, on the way to the island, on the island, and then the final act. And I think that is a good remake that expands upon the story, increases the effects, and just does a really good job. And that's the first and only one I can think of.
Yeah,
so,
I'm
that's good.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. The only thing that I would say to the people who say the movie is too long is there are some scenes that slow the tempo of the movie in such a way that, like, even though, yes, it is necessary and relevant to build up to the eventual inevitable climax of the film, where King Kong is just, doing everything that you expected. He's smashing New York City. Like, there's enough that leads up to that point that I would say, like, when you slow the tempo down, it does make the movie feel super long. Like, it's hard to deal with, man. But
it's a once in a blue moon watch. I haven't seen that movie in years, but I remember it enough.
Yeah, to kind of touch on a final point, like, here's a funny little thing to note. Pretty much every single Predator movie is a remake. Like, there's no Predator movie that's not, like, there's no Predator movie that's directly correlated to its predecessor.
Can I rank those movies real quick? Can I tell you the best Predator movies out there?
The best one's Prey, but go on.
The best one
Prey.
is... Would you let me finish my sentence? The second best one is Predators with Adrian Brody.
Okay.
The third best one is Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And yes, Kevin, I was going to say that the best one is Prey. So,
okay, good.
There you go.
Good.
Prey, Predators, Predator.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. Yeah, that's a proper assessment. I mean, I'd love to see, like, we've gotten a masterful recreation of Mad Max in our time. There are so many things that have been remade and been remade well that there's, going back to your original criticism, there's almost no excuse for not analyzing, using the resources and budget that you have to properly remake something. Anything.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the way to sum up all of this.
There's no excuse to do a bad remake.
Whether it's a live action remake or a remake in general, you are absolutely correct. And you are right. With the budget that Hollywood has and with the resources out there and with the experience gained, there is no reason we should be getting as many shitty remakes as we are.
If you're about to own the state of Florida and you do a bad remake, fuck off. Fuck off. You have more money than the rest of the state. You have more money than a state budget and you can't remake a movie properly? Get out of here.
Go away.
Yeah. That was perfect. I mean, that's probably my favorite bit from the show, and I might bring that back. Is like, let's be executives.
I love that.
Let's be executives real quick, because that was
I think
real
we should
fun.
Pretend to be executives for all kinds of companies.
Dude, for a minute, the biggest problem in my life was that I may have covered up some shit that Epstein did, and I love that you gave that to me today.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but you're welcome. I have a question for you.
What?
What's your jam this week?
Dude, my jam. I put some thought into this. My jam this week is now I'm blanking because I said I put some thought into this. Fuck. No, my jam this week. Yesterday I was jamming some lo-fi music, but for the majority of the week I was kind of delving back into some things that I really loved when I was younger. And one of my favorite albums, not top 10 or anything, but definitely one of my favorite albums, is Freak Show by Silverchair, which was, like, to give you a quick quick overview. Like Silverchair, a lot of people know them from the song Anna's Song, which was like kind of about bulimia and stuff, and like just having eating disorders, things like that. But they had this awesome album. I forget what year it came out. Probably like 98, 99, somewhere around there. Like maybe even 2000 or 2001. Somewhere in that window. They had this album that came out that was like the grungiest effing album. Like it just starts with like hardcore dissonant grunge tones, and the first few songs are like really dirty lyrically. Like you can just tell like there's a lot of angst, and then it develops into this like post-rock, and not post-rock in like the mathematical sense, but just kind of like post-rock in the genre-bending sense. Like there's some strings that come in a little later. There's a song that sounds almost like it almost sounds like a poppy, happier version of a Nirvana song. Like, oh, it's just such a good album, and I love going back to that album because no matter how I cut it, I just enjoy it. So that was really good. And then as far as watching things this week, I've been watching The Silo, which is once again, I mean, Apple TV is just fucking
That's on my list. We talked about
it.
this.
Apple TV is crushing it. And then quick summary, I'm not even going to do spoilers. Elemental was fine. It was another Pixar movie.
Oh, right.
It's like, oh, what if all the elements were anthropomorphized? And they hit like all the joking beats that you would think. Like the majority of the funniest moments they even showed in the fucking trailer. Like, but once again, it's a kid's movie. It's not for me. Like I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, this movie is for 36-year-old Kevin. Like, no, I went with the kids. They're all packed into the back of the Subaru. They're like, Chloe and Mason had friends over. Caden's in the back. We're all just, eating popcorn and having a good time watching the drive-ins. And then the Little Mermaid took out my favorite character that's inconsequential to the plot. Here's what I'll say about the Little Mermaid. Visual design, A fucking plus. Great job. Casting.
They changed the lobster to a crab.
Casting, A fucking plus. Amazing. Like super good. All of the songs hit really well. They made them a little bit more theatrical, which is fine. I absolutely loved that it sounded more like someone was singing live and in person, and they like left some vibrato in. The cast all did a great job playing their parts. Even Melissa McCarthy was fine. The small spoilers, instead of the prince, what's his name, Eric or whatever, instead of him ramming Ursula with the ship, the Little Mermaid does it. Great. They don't like, and they didn't hold on it like that was a big point, like going back to what you were talking about, like going back to what we talked about before. They changed it, right? She has a little more agency in this than she had in the original cartoon. But ultimately it was just okay. Like it's just another remake. It's fine. Like it wasn't. I hope that this is somebody's introduction to The Little Mermaid, because it was good and entertaining and everything that you would hope that a remake would be. So like as far as remakes go, it's good. It's fine. You can watch it. And I would put it right alongside Beauty and the Beast in like it's a win for Disney in that they've remade something that they can add to their catalog, and I think kids will love it.
I think that's Aladdin. I think is probably my favorite out of those live action remakes.
Yeah,
I think it's it's fun. Yeah,
and they're fine.
Yeah.
They're not like, they don't blow me out of the water, but they're good. Whatever. And that's it. That's it this week. A little bit of grunge music, a little chilling, and a whole lot of going to the drive-ins.
Yeah.
Yep. And the Silo is really good. I highly recommend the Silo because it's like,
that's on my watch
there
list.
are so many things that are like gritty. It's hard to say. Like the beginning of the show feels like gritty, compartmentalized, claustrophobic, post-apocalyptic future, but as the show develops and you learn more about like the culture and just some of the interactions that they allow to happen and the way that they allow the stories to unfold on the show that do unfold, really fucking good. Like really, really good.
It's on my list.
What's your jam?
Mine, I haven't really honestly watched much of anything this week. Oops, wrong button.
Ha!
Yeah, honestly, I didn't really watch any TV. My background show, but I think I watched maybe a total of 3 episodes, was It's Always Sunny. I've been watching through that, like in the background, but nothing really new.
Yeah.
Honestly. Duh. So my workload was really large this week, so that's why I didn't really watch anything. But I've been listening to some podcasts as I work.
Okay.
The Doy. One of my favorites, I've been re-listening to some of my favorite episodes of Do Go On, which is an Australian comedy trio that take things that have happened in history, whether it be about people, events, whatever, and they do a report on it. And they each take turns talking about certain things, but they make it fun, lighthearted. They tell jokes. They go on rants. They go on tangents. It's really fun. It's a really fun way to learn.
Okay.
Also, they're just really funny people. So, like, they've covered some really cool historical events. So if you're like, I've always wanted to learn about, what's a really good one they've done? They've done like the DB Cooper. They've done the history of World War II. They've done the history of JFK. They've done like the Hindenburg disaster, the Colfax explosion, a bunch of serial killers and stuff. So if you're like, I wanted to learn about Ted Bundy, but I want it to be fun and I don't want to be grossed out and creeped out, then like this is a great way to do that.
Nice.
So I've been listening to a lot of them, a lot of my old favorite episodes of Do Go On. And then I was listening to Suggestible, which is the host of the Weekly Planet. Him
Mr.
and his wife
Sunday
do that.
Movies.
Yeah, that's a really fun one. I really like his wife, Tony, or Claire Tonti. Sorry,
Claire Tonti. I do like Claire. I have checked out her music though, and it is not for me, unfortunately. I was really hoping I would. Like
I have
it more.
not.
It's
I have not checked it out yet.
It's very, it's very folky and kind of simple and raw and emotional, and I think that works for a lot of people, but not for me.
I might like that then, because that's up my alley.
Yep.
But yeah, honestly, that is all the news. That's the only 2 things I really have to say that's new.
Cool. That's cool. You did make me think. I did because the episodes are so short, I did find time to cram in this week every episode of season 3 of I Think You Should Leave, Tim Robinson's comedy show. Have you seen that show?
Well, we've talked about it. I've seen clips, and I looked up that pay it forward clip you told me about last night.
God, was that not perfect?
I looked that up on YouTube. It is 1,000% what I wanted it to be.
I love that scene. That's all I could think. All I could think about was last week when we were talking about just doing something nice for somebody, like going out of your way, like getting a good deed in. But I love how Tim Robinson, he does that with so many things. He just takes this concept that we have in our culture and then like expands it out to its most ludicrous and ridiculous. Dude, there's this hilarious skit on the show where they have like the Metal Maniacs motto board or whatever. It's like a game show where people have to guess what the motto is. And they have this whole big intro cartoon about the Metal Maniac climbing all around on this giant metal fortress that he's built and how he's getting attacked by these things and they're trying to take metal sheets away. And then he rebuilds it with incredible speed. And then he's like, the metal's actually my ground. And the whole time you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then the host of the Metal Maniac show is like trying to get these people to guess the motto, and they're like, this guy comes out with this suit and it's obviously clunky and not moving fast at all. And like, they're like, I guess pink, the pink dot square. And like, he's like, the pink dot square, the Metal Maniac's going with incredible speed. And like, you see the guy like trying to make his way over. He's got these like magnets on his arms.
Feels like a fever dream.
Dude, the whole show is just fucking like, it
reminds me of the
perfect.
Eric Andre show.
It's a lot like Eric Andre.
And
like
that chaos, that chaos element.
Yeah. No,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just, and everything culminates in people yelling. Like there's a scene where like someone parks on the sidewalk and then this guy gets his ponytail stuck in the car because he's trying to climb under it. It's fucking like,
I love it.
Yeah. What are you gonna do this week? What do you got going on? Give me a quick what's up in Odie's life this week?
Well, I'm going to do this thing called work quite a bit. Trying to get my workload done early this week so I could take a long weekend. getting ready to go whitewater rafting, making plans for 4th of July to go whitewater rafting out here.
Woo!
But this week, I believe we are going. Oh, we are later in the week. We're going bowling. There's a bowling alley that does like on Wednesday nights. It's like 75% off, unlimited bowling. And then I think on either Thursday or Friday, we are going to a hike where you hike through and over a waterfall and then up a mountain to a lake reservoir.
Wow.
So, yeah,
that's pretty
super
awesome.
stotoked.
I'm
and then we're seeing Asteroid City. Sorry.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I kind of want to see that. I am working a ton, but next weekend I am actually going to the wedding of so you know how I go on the mission trip, right?
Yes.
Well, the first year I went, this girl Joy came, and her and her fiance Lorenz are getting married. And I'm going to their wedding next weekend on July 1st, I think. It's next weekend. But I'm really excited because I get to see a lot of the people that I love. But I'm also really excited because I actually introduced them when I was on that mission trip. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
and I remember like, because I would like listen to them. You know, I speak Spanish and I like obviously speak English. But like at one point I was like, Joy, Joy, you know, Lorenz actually thinks you're kind of cute. Like, because I had heard him talking in Spanish. And she was like, really? And now, you know, here we are. Like, year and a half later, they're getting married, man. And I'm just like, I can't wait to see that. Like, little things like that. And it's not because I, like, I don't feel like obviously there's a lot of work that goes into a relationship, but it's just cool to like think back to the exact moment when a relationship actually began. And if you're so there cool, and then you go get to see a wedding, like that's a bonus. Like I'm not going because I said that. I'm going because like they put the work in to get to that point. Like it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah, man. So I'm really excited about that. Good. Oh, I finally remember my bit from the beginning.
Oh my God!
We were gonna start the podcast.
2 hours in.
Yeah, well, we had a lot to talk about when it came to remakes. It turns out, should have been broken up into different episodes. I think we really we screwed the pooch on this one. Well, what a weird phrase. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Yes, I think what you should name this episode.
Why do we?
I just thought of it.
Why do we say that? Screwed the pooch. You know what a pooch is. Why do we say that?
I think you should name. Hang on, I gotta get this out because you gotta name this. I think you should name this episode. Kevin accidentally changes Odie's opinion on remakes.
I'm gonna mention that in the summary, but that is too long for an episode title. But yeah, okay, all right, we can do that. It's probably gonna be some nonsense about Disney execs and something else. Like, yeah,
of course.
Yeah. But here we are. I kind of don't want to end the podcast this week. I kind of don't. Like I'm enjoying talking, and I feel like we could keep going. Do you have stuff going on?
Oh,
right
easily.
Now?
Like today, or just in general?
Like right now. It's like 1:12.
No, I'm just working today. Really.
Wasn't 1:12 the name of a hip hop group from the 90s? They did Peaches and Cream.
You're asking me?
They did Peaches and Cream, man. Look it up. Peaches and Cream. 1:12. That's what time it is. It's Peaches and Cream time. What?
Yeah, 1:12.
There it is. Peaches and Cream. Oh, my God.